it's time for the nerd log. The reality is that if you were a child who got, when you were in elementary school, taken into a little room and said, now, child, we're having a problem we call auditory processing disorder where you can't seem to hear anything. Well, that's what they said. What I heard was, then when you're in a situation trying to do a live stream and you're hearing the audio from like 5 seconds ago through some headphones as your speakers are playing another audio, it will make you think that you are about to go insane. But we fixed all that. It's time for the nerd log. I can hear my own voice, which not great, but I'll deal with it. It's fine. And we have got one guest, because one guest is all we need for an extremely cool feature. We've got James Conway. James, say hi to the people. Tell them what you do for New Relic.
Hello. I am a product manager on the New Relic incubator team. And so we investigate really interesting customer problems and come up with really great solutions.
Nice.
And that's what I'm here to show today. And Thanks. Yes, and so I'm glad you can hear me. For a while, I was a little nervous because when you said, now we're going to switch to big head mode, there was too much of a gap between head and mode. So I thought you were saying, we're going to switch to big head. And I thought, I have a name.
Cool. Oh, no. I apologize.
It's my first time. Come on.
I promise that I have the largest head. I have to buy my hats at a special store, so no worries.
No, my mom still resents me. Okay, moving along. Let's talk Automap. So I want to get through some quick slides so we can actually get to the demo because it's a great thing to see in action. But let me tell you a bit why we created Automap. So we see all of the different types of architectures modeled with our users in New Relic, and increasingly, for a number of reasons, for the move to microservices and decomposing monoliths, or just going natively with cloud services and a more distributed architecture, while much easier, I shouldn't say easier, but while there's those advantages in developing and maintaining distributed services and microservices models, they can create different kinds of problems when in operation, right? And trying to diagnose issues and incidents of where we can see that, the things that wake you up, right? If you're monitoring all your software and you have alerts set up, what wakes you up can often not actually be the real source of the problem. So sometimes, the behavior is emergent, right? And it's
I want to talk about this for a second because this is so real. I have given presentations where I said, it is now normal when you say, hey, here's the name of a service, like a microservice that you host. Right. And the question, like when someone checks out on the online store, does it hit this service? Mm-hmm. Is just a question that nobody knows anymore, right? They need to look at some kind of map. They do not have it in their heads. They do not necessarily have it in documentation. I have said that at meetups, and I've had people come up afterwards and like hug me to say, thank you. I thought that I was alone in this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it's not even a matter, you're sometimes lucky if it's just a matter of one person keeping it in their head. Oftentimes, the real reality of what's talking to what and how does all this stitch together is actually across a number of different folks, right?
Yeah. We're out of the era where there was kind of one, everybody tried to have knowledge, but there was always kind of one person who you could get that sort of understood the whole thing. Often it was like a technical founder or somebody who really had a good map in their mind. And that's just, right. Now it's, everybody on the team is getting together and saying, we genuinely do not know. There are so many possible paths, right? It's 80 factorial is the number of possible paths to the system. And so it's just not something that without an automatic tool, you're going to be able to know.
Absolutely. And what's even complicating this in the context of, diagnosing these issues is that oftentimes, it's not just that your real problem is separate or distant from the service that woke you up or the microservice that woke you up. There's a delta in time, right? Because these issues can now kind of propagate and cascade through the system to where, ultimately the issue that you're aware of and that you're focused on, maybe that's your team's service that you're responding to, but figuring out not just where should you be looking, but when is much more difficult, right? It's hard. Software is hard, right? But, so what we started thinking about was, okay, well, what if instead of asking folks to kind of go through this sequential diagnosis of starting with a service and looking at what it's connected to, and then looking at a candidate, and then looking at what it's connected to, and so on and so on and so forth. What if instead we could take all of the data, right, and all of the modeling that comes from the entity platform in New Relic, and what if we could construct a view that actually shows the whole thing? Like, what if you could see the whole system, or actually more effectively, just the slice of the system that really matters in an incident context, right?
Yeah.
If you could just see, like, just show me what's the blast radius, as it were.
Yeah.
That gives you that best of both worlds. Show me everything I need to see, but not anything that I necessarily don't need to see, right?
Yeah, one of the things that I've seen is, like, if you're not able to get that kind of time sense, then you'll see, like, oh, well, show me the longest running request. And it's like, oh, well, this one service takes 8 minutes to reply. And, you're in that middle of the night, or you're in crisis.
Right.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, that obviously looks bad. We have to look into that. And you burn 5 minutes looking into your once nightly, account updates. It's supposed to be a slow running job. And it's totally fine, because you don't have that sense of, like, hey, is this normal for this service to respond to this amount of time? How long has this been going on? How frequent is that request? You just don't have that time sense, and so you're just looking at whatever stands up at the highest.
Absolutely. I mean, you could really say, and this is what we heard from users when we were, trying to look at how do we solve this, is that what really matters is context, right? In trying to diagnose these issues in complex systems, these distributed systems, it's all about context, right? It's the where, it's the when, it's the what. And so that's really where we started with. And what we found was that, when you really need to find out that context, there's really 3 capabilities that you need to have, right? It has to start with, first, a complete topology of your system. You have to be able to model and understand just, how are the streets laid out, so to speak? What's talking to what services are connected to other services? And, with the data now, like, they weren't able to ingest from the entity platform, we're able to do that, right? And pretty effectively from a variety of sources. But you also need to have this notion of understanding the behavior, right? Because, much like with a street map, right? Knowing what streets are connected to what is important. But if what you're trying to do is plot your commute home, what you really want to know is what's the state of those streets? What's the traffic at a given time? And that's critical, the time, right? Because you might want to see, how is that traffic, or how's that behavior changing over time? And likewise, when you're trying to understand issues and incidents in these distributed systems, it's not just about what's the state, what's happening right now, but what led up to it? How did we get there, right? You need to have all 3. And so that's why we developed Automap. And as you can see from the slide, it's telling me that I should shift over to the demo. So that's what I'm going to do now.
I love that. I'm back, by the way. I had to deal with a dog problem, so I disappeared for a second.
Should get the lavalier in place so we get these smooth throat sounds. The sounds of me swallowing, licking my own lips, and clearing my throat.
It could have gone far worse. Just remember that. No, I'm kidding.
Chris Snow asks, are we going to post this session later? Yes, Chris, all these sessions do go up on YouTube. If you look for the hashtag or the tag nerdlog, you can see all of our past shows. They're also in the New Relic playlist. You're on YouTube now, so I know you're close, Chris, to see all of our past sessions. They have nice show notes and links and everything in the description.
Awesome. Okay, so demo of Automap. So I'm going to flip over, and now we're looking. This should look like a familiar view to folks. This is the summary screen for a service, right? And this is in the new view, the NR1 view, which is much better. Now, the reason I'm looking at this one is because I looked earlier, and as you can see in the activity feed here, we previously had warning violations. So this is a service that's experienced some distress, right? And there is logic, because we do want to have that filtered view so that you can really just see what you need to see. When you invoke an automap matters, and we'll see that in a moment. So I'm going to go to the related entities pane for this service. And the related entities pane shows me all the other entities that are represented in the entity platform. And just for anyone who doesn't know what an entity is, we represent, in New Relic, we represent entities as the components, what's important of your system, right? The things you know about your system. They could be the services, they could be synthetic monitors, they can be hosts, they can be containers, they can be, right? Anytime you're thinking of something and you're wondering what's wrong with that, that is something that you can model as an entity in New Relic. And
I think of it as like something that emits some kind of metrics, right?
Yeah, something that you want to get the metrics for. Yeah,
and it's important to abstract because there's not a server when you have serverless. Like, yes, it is someone's server. Well, I get it. Thank you. Don't at me on that one. But the reality is like, hey, it is a very briefly existing execution environment.
Yeah.
So when you say, okay, what are you monitoring here, right? It's like, well, it's not a server, it's not a host, it's not a container, right? We need a more general term, and so entities it, right?
It's
entities
something you care about, right? And
it's something you care about,
talk about, and it's something that you want to gather telemetry and understand, right? And so it's something you want to represent in a platform like New Relic. So, to that earlier point, the complexity of these systems is too much for one person. So being able to, abstract and put all of that information in a platform that the rest of the team can access, and you can have that shared view. That's why something like New Relic is so critical. So we've got the related entities, and we can see what else is somehow connected and has a relationship to this service, my user service staging. But this only kind of goes 1 degree out, right? There's only 1 degree of connection. And I need to really understand the behavior of the system as it relates to affecting the service. I need to have a larger view of the system. So I'm going to invoke the Automap, and I do that by clicking on this newly added map view button here. So that's going to invoke Automap. And what Automap is doing here is recreating the issue so that I can see all of the.
Can we get some zoom here?
Oh yeah.
Let's see if we can zoom in and enhance just
a lot on this screen.
There is, because there's a lot in this environment.
Yeah, there's a lot in this environment, and it's also, again, like the Twitch gives us the low res version, New Relic, or not New Relic, YouTube gives us the low res version. I think we're good. I think we got it.
I want to see, because I can see that I'm a little, from my indicator in my time warp, I might be a little bit past, so I might need to find a new example here, but let's see where we go. So here's where I can see my user service staging here. And right now it's green, which is great, because I know that the problem occurred in the past. And so in order to be able to now navigate backwards in time, we're going to invoke time warp. And time warp allows me to kind of slide back in time to where I can see when some of the issues have occurred. And of course,
for those of you who are UX nerds, I really want you to notice that this is not simulated, that you slide this time warp and it just gives you these other time views like that, right? It's not a web request. It's actually preloaded. So you can get a sense of something changing with time without having to sit there and wait for a web request for each query.
Yeah, and so here, because the window of time warp really is, it's intended to be invoked in those moments when you need that view most. And so as these events age out, it can present a bit of a challenge for yours truly from a demo perspective, but it's a good thing. So I'm actually going to see if I can pivot over and find here with another issue, or take a look at a new service. And this will also give you an example how, so with here, again, I have my related entities. I'm looking at a different service now, right? So I've gone from my user service over to my authorization management service. And I'm going to, again, invoke Automap, right? And again, fortunately, everything is looking good. But here's an example of what I can also show you here, that you may have seen a flickering here, right?
Oh yeah.
Right. So there's 2 kinds of information that are being presented here, right? And this relates to that ability to understand the behavior of a service, right? So one capability is, again, you need to know everything that's connected. And this is everything that's connected, but it's not a complete view. It's only anything that's experienced a change in health related to that primary entity.
Yeah.
Within this 3-hour period, right? So one of the pieces of feedback we heard early on is that for customers with very complex environments where there's hundreds of services, paradoxically, sometimes seeing everything is a problem of its own because it's too much. There's too much noise.
Oh, right. You don't want to know that your Korean media streaming arm is experiencing some latency. You're trying to sell bunny socks in the US, right? And you sort of, oh, okay, yeah, it's great that we have that level of visibility because maybe these things do touch each other and we can go over there. But that's actually something that really occurred to me with this is that, yes, this looks like a complex map, but it's not the whole system at all, right? It's just the stuff that we have reason to believe is actually related.
Right, just that slice of what's relevant for this issue that you're investigating right now, right?
Yeah.
And so to be able to then navigate, right, because this is like Automap is intended to be that responders navigate primary navigation tool across the system. Start from what there's a problem with, there's this is affected, but being able to navigate not only across the topology across the system, but back in time to find that which service should I really be focusing on and when is that critical period of time, right? And so the guideposts that users are able to leverage in this view come from two primary sources. And this is, again, where we're kind of leveraging all the work across the rest of the platform for this view. One is health status, which is primarily informed by alerts. And being able to get the most value out of Automap really depends on making sure that your alerts are well tuned, right? And so that you do have the settings set so that when one of your signals, like if your response time does cross a certain threshold, that's bad. And you've configured an alert to indicate that is bad, and you would see that registered as a change in the health status. So alerts are one source that we're tapping into. The other, and you can see this here in these are the layer controls, or if you think of it as the two layers that we're putting on top of this topology graph, is of anomalies. And anomalies is where the Automap is benefiting from all of the work done around AI ops, proactive detection, customized anomaly detection. So it's not even that we're able to, that you as a user is saying, I've told you that if this signal hits this value, that you should alert, wake me up, change the status. But we're able to just detect based on a mathematical analysis of the signal that this is different, right? And that is information that's increasingly important.
Yeah, this is really critical because, on one level we have our sort of what one refers to as golden signals, like, hey, you don't want the memory usage to get to 100%, right? You can set that up way ahead of time, say, hey, warn me if we ever get to this point. But something like throughput is just not something that you can do that as reasonably. Your business can grow or things can change, so you can have double the throughput you had last week. It's not really cause for alarm as something you can pre-configure. But anomaly detection can also tell you, and this is the thing I think is really critical, was why I talk about throughput. If you have 10x of views, that's a problem. But also if you have 0.00x, right? 0.002x, right? Like, hey, this database service suddenly only has, 2 requests an hour, right? That will show up as an anomaly from anomaly detection. And that's just something where AI can help you, right? It can give you some clue that there's a problem without you having to think of this in advance.
Totally. And there was once a team there was a team at New Relic that used the beautiful acronym MTBLS as a measurement of really measuring services or the alerts, and rather than the normal MTTI and MTTR, and MTBLS, mean time between loss of sleep, right?
Yeah.
And I love that definition for alerts because that is kind of the context. People are waking up and it's having a real impact on folks personally. But to your point,
G. Spencer has a question. I just do want to go ahead and read it out because I interrupt because that's the deal. Twitch messages are rude. Which is, does this read from the same signals as lookout? So the golden signals. And so it does.
Yep, absolutely. So this is really where when we were looking at how we were building this out, we were looking at it across as a platform, right? And so that we could say things, we could see the change of behavior over time, right? And so here you can see, and here's one I can focus on redraw on. And actually, I could do that right from here. So I'm going to redraw the map again. So Automap is really built on top of the entire NR1 platform. We're built on top of the entity platform. We're leveraging the work in AI ops and proactive detection and lookout, but also adding new capabilities that really don't exist anywhere else. And Time Warp's a great example of that. So here now is a different kind of, here's another map where I'm looking at mobile data API. I can see that right now it's in a warning state, and a warning violation was opened recently. And so I can slide back. This is the one I'm going to really look at, this one that is now about an hour and a half ago for me. I'm in the central time zone, so it's 3:30 p.m. for me right now. And if I slide back to around that period, I can see it. At one point, everything was fine. So it's kind of noisy today. Around 1:28, everything looked okay. If I start to move forward in time, I can see what's the moment when it started to actually open that violation, right? And so what this allows me to do is with Automap, I can take a look and see whether or not the issue, like what preceded that? What was some of the behavior that preceded this, right? Well, I can see some correlation between shard cache, which has a direct relationship. I can see mobile data aggregator has a direct relationship as well. And so I'm using this information to kind of scope and understand where should my focus be, right? I don't know that the problem might necessarily be in this other service, but it's close enough in time that I might want to take a look and see if I can now refocus my attention to where it really should be. So again, this thought of, how do we provide a view that really allows teams to navigate complex environments across the topology as well as through time. And that's really the point of service maps. So service maps, Automap. Yeah. Yep. And so so again, Automap is and one other important point that I should make sure to focus on, because I think this is useful for folks involved. If I jump back now to my slides. So the last important piece of information that I think is worthwhile is, again, those three capabilities: topology, behavior, and navigation through time. Our competition in this space, no one. There's a lot of other vendors in this space that provide real-time views. So they'll show you some of their topology. They'll show some of what the behavioral analysis is. But when we looked across the competitive landscape, we saw that it's really now only New Relic that's able to provide you those three necessary capabilities, so that you can take that system-wide view, slide backwards and forwards in time to zero in using that behavioral analysis as those guideposts to find out exactly where and when you need to be looking in the context of an incident.
I mean, don't give away the secrets. They're going to find out.
Yeah, and you could. This is why we have the platform we have. Do I have my? Well, when is my new mixtape dropping? I keep forgetting. The date keeps
Yeah, it keeps sliding around. That's the thing with those cassette distributors is they'll really, they say, oh, we can deliver at this price, but then you're really waiting for a while for those crates to actually show up.
Yeah, I'd make a joke about how I'm actually old enough to where I'm dropping a new 8-track, but there's probably a hipster somewhere in Brooklyn that would be like, "Shut up, 8-track's coming back."
8-track's coming back. Mini disc is coming back.
Yeah, clearly.
It's on its
No,
way.
that's really everything for today. But thanks so much for the opportunity.
Well, thank you so much for coming out to do it. Thank you again to my co-host, Ali. Come out and check out the Nerd Blog every single Thursday. Check us out on YouTube. We got past episodes there. A lot of them are kind of quite evergreen, so we do really appreciate that. Ali, you have other stuff you want to plug?
Follow me here on Twitch at Ending with Ali. I stream
that
other
me,
things
or-
that aren't always New Relic, but are generally tech related. So you can definitely come see me for fun things, or follow the Relicans on Instagram. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, follow Serverless Mom on TikTok. I did a thing about eggs. It was pretty funny. Thank you so much to everybody. Look, I didn't just hit the stop broadcast button right in the middle of us being done talking. I did my plugs. Therefore, Grace, the social media manager, can't be mad at me from a legal standpoint. Thanks so much, everybody.